Dave, it's me, Dave. I know you want to shimmy in the sun with all your friends, but right now, seriously, don't. Hang out from home, where pants are optional. You can do it for America.
You are listening to the Lucha Central Podcast Network. And now, Lucha Central Weekly. Welcome, everyone, to the Lucha Central Podcast. This is the podcast that recaps all of the latest happening in the world of Lucha Libre. Each team our week will let you know what's happening in Lucha Libre from this past week and also preview what's to come. We cover news from AAA, CMLL, and the top Mexico-based independent wrestling promotion, along with luchadores from WWE, AEW, MLW, Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, and beyond. Now, the Lucha Central Weekly Podcast is a proud member of the Lucha Central Podcast Network, Central.com, yours all the news in Lucha Libre. Now, this show is a team effort. We don't do it alone. My name is Miranda Morales. I am one of the hosts of Lucha Central Week. It's great to be with all of you, but I'm my two co-hosts. Introducing first, Dusty Murphy. Dusty, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Had beautiful weather all week. Just been enjoying the early summer.
Yes, how much in such a short amount of time. I know that we're still technically spring. I always say as the summer, but I guess summer doesn't really start for another month or so.
Yeah, about June the 20th, I think?
Yeah, so, but I'm out here in Arizona where it's pretty much summer all year round. The third member of our cast, the third co-host, is Mr. Brendan Barr. Brendan, tell the people how you're doing today.
I'm doing pretty good. This week, I was supposed to, before everything else went crazy, I was supposed to be down in Las Vegas to hang out with some friends that were doing the AEW traveling stuff. And so now I had these days off from my work that had already been approved, so I'm just kind of getting that vacation that so many other people have been having and experiencing for weeks already.
Man, that's nice. I was in Las Vegas for AEW Double or Nothing. I was fairly disappointed. Understandable why they run this event in Las Vegas, but I was supposed to be there with you, enjoying all the things of Las Vegas, including gambling, which I'm terrible at, and drinking, which I'm great at. So I feel that would have been a great balance.
I had it all planned out. I had food trips that I was going to do because there are restaurants that are unique to Vegas. So I was going to go specifically to some of those restaurants so I could actually say I've eaten there at some point in my life.
Run off one, by chance, you remember that you were going to hit as part of your list?
I wanted to hit any of the Gordon Ramsay joints, but particularly the burger place because I hear those are some of the best burgers on the Strip.
Ah, okay. I had never. My favorite place, it's pretty well known, have very many of them in Arizona, is Shake Shack. Like, that's my go-to place when I go to Las Vegas. It's in New York, so I don't know wherever I'm at, and go to Shake Shack and get me a burger there, which is not necessarily as glamorous as Gordon Ramsay's joint, but hey, it does the trick.
What about you, Dusty? Where do you go when you're in Vegas?
I haven't been in years. I'm trying to think. I actually got to go to the WCW restaurant when I was in high school in Vegas. My aunt took me. Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh my gosh, that was no topic.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Oh my god, I totally forgot they had a restaurant.
Yeah, they did. And everything was themed, and the menus had pictures of Goldberg on them. It was pretty far out.
That's incredible. You'll never, the closest now to a wrestling is wrestlers who actually have their own restaurants or, like ODB's food truck, things like things like that. But, man, that's a glorious time to have gone to the WCW restaurant.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Who knows? Maybe next year, Memorial Day, if you guys are available, and we can all, make the trek to Las Vegas and make it a point to be there for Double or Nothing. Knock on wood.
That would be awesome.
I would love to do that.
Yeah. I haven't gotten the refunds yet. I've decided to keep my ticket because it's definitely a bucket list thing that I really wanted to do this year. So I've decided I'm going to hold on to it for next year. And so I'm making it one way or another.
Right on.
Yeah. Hey, once this whole hopefully calms down, we can all, travel again back to some normal. And including with that is a topic that we've been discussing over the past, which is road back to shows. And I'm actually going to kick it off to Brendan for an update on this topic.
Well, yeah, so when I thought there wasn't going to be a lot more news on this, a couple people started really firing off some interesting things. Conan, once again, said that AAA will probably, in the near future, be going to do shows somewhere where the states will allow it. So he's going to have some sort of wrestling one way or another, but the most likely plan is when they get the Mexican government has color issues, so when they reach below the yellow coloration, they are able to have small gatherings with which would support athletic events happening. And we said the first one of those that clears up is probably where they're going to do a show. And so then looking at that, other events or other people have kind of come out with things. CMLL has hinted that there might be a September time for shows. Those might be empty arena shows. And then the rumors were going around that the WWE is even planning on restarting their live format. Some people probably know they're doing pre-recorded matches right now, and they're doing a week's worth of events at a time. But they're looking at July for going back to the live format. More and more, we're getting schools too. I even saw on Twitter this morning that the Level Up school that B-Boy is running is reopening with a kind of hybrid online, offline.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's still being tentative with their timelines. Some of them based off of federal or statewide regulating. The case in Mexico, looking, a lot of things aren't really going to just be running in general through the summer. But I feel like Conan's approach is just deciding to take the show on the road and go wherever to find a venue and a place to do it.
Yeah, it's a real punk rock ethos, kind of. We'll go wherever they'll have us. Anywhere we can wrestle, we'll show up there and wrestle. And I really love that.
Yeah, that actually wins me a lot of points, too, because to Dusty's point, that's a very DIY punk rock kind of attitude towards it. Not like I'm just going to sit home and wait. We're going to make it happen. We're going to do something, but we're still going to try and be safe and aware of what's going on.
Yeah, they took a lot of precautions during the tournament, the Lucha Fighter tournament, and so we know that they have the capacity of taking safety measures. I'm just curious, statistically, how that even works. I mean, now to almost do it in an underground type of vibe, a lot of conversations that are going to be happening, but also, going by the flying by your seat kind of thing, where you won't really know if a show is going to happen until the moment it actually does. And so I think that will be interesting. And if they want to stream it and produce it, if they eventually want fans to get there, I think that those are all going to be things that I can imagine being very hard to play.
Well, that's absolutely a thing that I can tell that at least AAA is thinking about. Obviously, the WWE is already working on keeping content up to date. Is they want to go somewhere where they can have a small gathering, so they have film and they have the ability to put content online or on the TV channels, so that the brand isn't forgotten, the contracts aren't neglected.
Well, and going back to what you said about WWE, I think a lot of the rumblings about having house shows or shows starting to run in July, because there's been a lot of speculation on management, specifically Vince McMahon, wanting to run SummerSlam with people. And that's in August, so having time to sort out what live shows look like with an audience. But ultimately, what do you think a SummerSlam would look like, where it's one of the biggest events of the year, the party of the year? I mean, obviously it can't be at the same capacity that it typically. So what would that look like?
So that is the thing that makes it weird, because SummerSlam and WrestleMania are like the two bookends, and like you mentioned, it's a big party atmosphere. So if they're only able to sell 3/4 of the amount of tickets they normally would have sold, first off, that already is going to look unusual. But they also have fan access, and there are other indie shows that usually pop up in the area because, if the big show is there, there's people that are hungry for more wrestling content. And, it's really hard to do that at that point if you're still in this, we can only have a very limited audience. You're going to have people that are going to, the indie shows are going to have like 10 people that are allowed to be there if they've got a full locker room. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I very much agree. And you bring up also a good point about just the environment around a big event of SummerSlam. We saw that with WrestleMania. A lot of independent promotions will run during that weekend, and they get a lot of publicity, a lot of fans, they generate a lot of income, and it's also a big time for wrestlers where they can work multiple shows and capitalize on it. But that will look very different, not only from, the SummerSlam point of view, but I'm sure for at least another year, because is it worth the trouble in a way for these promotions to run when there's going to be so many restrictions and maybe not enough profit to counteract, being able to rely on that fan base of WWE. That's a really good point that to be honest, didn't cross my mind until you mentioned that. So to your original question, the WWE themselves are going to have a similar issue. Is it worth it to have a giant stadium and only sell 3/4 of the tickets? Or are they going to do it maybe in a smaller venue, like as weird as it is to say, Madison Square Garden is kind of a small venue compared to what they normally do SummerSlam in, and then sell not necessarily as many tickets to even that smaller venue, but have a more full feel for the camera.
Yeah, that would be really grand in its scope and vision. Madison Square Garden looks like $1 million on TV. Every time you see it, it just looks good. And so I think if they found a way to kind of stagger the crowd, where we weren't as aware that there were missing rows of people, that the presentation in a smaller venue, like Madison Square Garden, was a lot smaller than, where they've been the last couple of times they've gone for a big show in New York. I think that it could really make the presentation look good. And, think about all those old wrestling shows that were recorded at Madison Square Garden, the history of the moment. You can tie into that with SummerSlam, and you don't necessarily have to have the crowd to get the important feel when you have it there.
Yeah, I very much agree. Madison Square Garden is not chop litter. Madison Square Garden is a jewel when it comes to venues, and so I don't think it would hurt the prestige at all. And also just has a long history with the company. So I definitely agree it to a smaller venue would help the look of the actual event. But to change it to Madison Square Garden, I almost an equal trade, not so much in size, having a big event like SummerSlam at a really prestigious venue like the Garden.
Indeed. Speaking of prestigious venues, that is the one advantage CMLL has in all of this, is they have a renowned Lucha Libre exclusive venue that always looks really good. So they have been a little more tight-lipped with their information as to when they're going to start opening Arena Mexico back up for fans. But if they're on a similar timeline, I know for a fact they will be competitive with AAA. Since AAA announced anything for real, they will do their best to match or beat that. But it will also have that kind of iconic feel, and I'm hoping we get a big return kind of feeling event for that too, even if it's not necessarily with the kind of branding that a SummerSlam would have.
Very good point. And I'm sure we need to talk about the road back to shows. Every week seems like more information is released, or we find tidbits out there. We will continue to bring that to the listener. But now we're going to kick it off to Denise Salcedo, this week's Lucha Central.
Hey everyone, it's Denise Salcedo here in Lucha Central with a look at all the great shows available this week on the Lucha Central Podcast Network, where you can find each show on its own or subscribe to the Lucha Central Podcast Network for every show in one easy feed. Just like the last 2 Mondays, this week we bring you the debut of one more monthly series, this one called The Business of the Business. Hosted by multi-decade wrestling writer, producer, promoter, and current Mass Republic president, Kevin Kleinrock. The series will take listeners into the inner workings of how officially licensed merchandise is made. This week on the show, graphic designer and illustrator Jeffrey Everett, who's created works for everyone from Seth Rollins to Rollins Band, and from Penta Cero M to the Pope. Yes, the Pope. This is a series you are not going to want to miss. Tuesday's Match, Mask, and Mayhem takes you back inside the temple as they get inside Lucha Underground Episode 3. If you're in the United States, you can head to Tubi.tv, where you can watch each episode of the series in advance to each week's MMM show. Don't miss the insider perspective from those who were there on set as the very first season unfolded. Thursday and Friday, we have you covered in both English and Spanish. First up, on Straight Out of the Bodega, Papo Esco, Gabriel Ramirez, and Kevin Kleinrock continue their conversation on a number of California scenes, wrestling promotions, and businesses. And on La Mesa de los Márgaros, CMLL luchador, member of the legendary Casas family, son of Felino, Tiger Casas, pulls up a seat around the table. On Friday, the Lucha Central Podcast Network brings you Lucha Central Weekly and Lucha Central Weekly en Español. Get all the latest updates from Mexico and the most newsworthy notes on luchadores across the globe, including a look at what went down at AEW Double or Nothing, and the latest on AAA's plans to resume shows. Be sure to subscribe and follow all your favorite Lucha Central Network series on your favorite podcast platforms. And please be sure to give a rating and review to help more fans find the shows that you love. For now, this is Denise Salcedo signing off from Lucha Central Central. Have a great week.
Thank you once again to Denise Salcedo, Lucha Central Central. As a reminder, this podcast and many other podcasts are part of the Lucha Central Podcast Network. You can find all of these podcasts on pretty much all your forms: Spotify, iTunes, Podbay, Speaker. I may be missing a few, but those are the big ones that come to mind. If there's another one, let us know, because I don't know all of them. But that just means that we are pretty much everywhere. The Lucha Central Podcast Network is growing. It is something for everyone. Now, I do want to segue into our first really big news story of this week, and it's revolving around WWE, specifically some things that we saw this past week on Monday Night Raw. I'm going to hand it over to Dusty, who's going to give us that information.
Yes, and WWE on Monday Night Raw right now, we're really seeing the strain that's being felt within Zelina Vega's stable. She recently lost Austin Theory to the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins. There's subtle turmoil building between Andrade and Garza, especially this week when during the match they cut away and interviewed Garza in this beautiful Versace jacket. He looked great. And then Andrade loses the championship match. I knew going into it on Memorial Day, WWE wasn't going to let a luchador retain the title against an American wrestler. So I just kind of knew how that was going to go. And, but other than that, the real story was the faction. The Andrade lose, and now I feel like we're being primed for a feud between these guys, Garza and Andrade. But the question is, who does Zelina side with? Or do either one of them want her as a manager now, with all her recent losses kind of stacking up? What do you think is next for her and their faction, Miranda?
That's a good question, because they were really built up as a force right after Mania. I think they had a lot of momentum behind them, and then the pieces started to fall apart. Austin Theory goes away. He's Seth. which actually is for him. He's
I do
young,
too.
he's hungry, and Seth has really written the book of what it's like to be a young, hungry wrestler in the WWE and what it takes in order to be successful. And if Austin Theory follows that, he is going to star. So I absolutely love that. But you are also right about probably Garza and Andrade. I'm sure Andrade is not happy that he lost the United States Championship. He may blame Zelina for some of that, so that will already cause some. And I think Garza's, his confidence is really building to the point where he may not need Zelina, and that he's better off on perfectly capable of handling himself. So I can neither one of them needing her or even wanting her for very different reasons. I think that at least Garza is a better promo, and so he doesn't necessarily need as much of a mouthpiece, whereas Andrade is more subtle, and he probably more of a voice, because even though he's super talented in the ring, you still need that voice in order to back it up. So I could probably Garza and Zelina the curve, but just more out of hubris than...
I agree completely. I think that's exactly how it's going to go, is that he just doesn't need her anymore, and he's able to keep going on his own. Like you say, he's a great talker. There's no hang-ups in his accent or anything for the American viewers, and I think he's on his way up. I think even more than this being the beginning of her faction kind of falling apart, I think it's the beginning of Garza's ascent to the next level in WWE.
Very much agreed. It does make me concerned about Zelina because this has been fantastic for her. Fantastic platform and a lot more just airtime and visibility, and she needs that because she's a really good manager. She's found a really good place, and I just hope that whatever happens to scenario, she still has someone to manage.
I have an interesting thought on that too. If we all seem to be in agreement that Angel is a fantastic speaker, and he's very clearly good at doing a kind of look where he's the overly confident and overly self-involved. So if he kicks both of them to the curb, in essence, like there's a big blow up and he decides to storm off, that could be the beginning of an Andrade face turn. And he could bring Zelina along for that because, as Miranda, you so rightfully pointed out, he still needs a little help with the English promo. So if the two of them become more of a good aligned faction, more of a face-forward sort of faction, there's more potential for things that they could do. They could be also skyrocketing up the card, but with fan support as opposed to the way where the position they're in now, where they are definitely the very hated heat.
I agree.
That's a really interesting direction. And you know what? I think it would help Andrade to be more of a face right now. Because that's what we get, that character development and character growth is being able to fluctuate, even if it's for a short time, from face to heel and heel to face a bit. We've really only, I think maybe initially was more as a face, but his biggest career is heel. And now to really see what else his career can entail, a face turn would be great for him. That would be the next level for him.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for, that they use him in that way, because I want to see that for one. And two, I want to see him. I want this whole faction. I want to see them shoot their way up the card. I want to see them in main events for years to come.
If they become a face and face manager, do you think somebody like Humberto Carrillo joins them? You know, like, does she start another stable, but with more face-oriented luchadors? Or do you think that it's just a pairing of manager and client?
I think it starts as the pairing of manager and client, and then as Humberto starts having his own issues or needs, maybe he comes to one side or the other. I mean, he could also do a little bit of a heel turn. He could still be determined that Zelina and Andrade are terrible, and then have kind of a very different sort of heel look about him, where he's doing everything he can to bring them down, even though they're trying to be faces. So there's lots of interesting things they could with that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That double turn.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's a rarity, but it could happen.
It worked so brilliantly for Stone Cold and Bret Hart at WrestleMania, and if they could get a match like that on a huge stage, I really think that they could make it work.
Yeah, the sky's the limit for this crew. The WWE very smartly chose some really good talent from the lucha community.
And I think that they're approaching a way that, again, it's not a caricature. I think that with Garza, it's still a little because he is a huge flirt and he still rips off his pants. And, there's elements about it, but I don't see comical. I don't think it's, to me personally, even culturally offensive, which is unfortunately, the track record that WWE has had in the past. So I feel like he plays this suave character fairly well. Is it a bit cheesy? Sure, but that you're also acting. I feel like he's fitting the bill fairly well. And Andrade is someone that he could, either a strong silent heel or face. But I think that now, because of just his visibility throughout the past, even a few years, a lengthy title, and just, there's just the recognition that he gets now worldwide, and outside of Mexico, but now around the world, they really build him into a solid face. And to be honest, they need to, especially on Monday Night Raw. You have Drew McIntyre, who is the primary face of the brand, and then you have incorporation, still like, Kevin Owens here and there, but you have to also think about who else. When you have a huge amount of heels throughout the show and not a whole lot of faces, you got to think about that dynamic and dichotomy, and that's always just been a problem for WWE, but it's also a lot easier, I think, to build a face or to build a heel than a face. But I think they have all the right elements with Andrade, and I hope it's something they explore.
And also on Monday Night Raw right now, we have, when it was kind of like a last-minute announcement at the end, even the announcers seemed perplexed. They announced a Rey Mysterio retirement ceremony for this coming Monday. Now that I know that it's going to be that it will be hosted by Seth Rollins, I'm assuming that it's all kind of a swerve and we're going to get a big story, but what do you think's going to come of this, Brendan?
I was unaware of the announcement that Seth Rollins was going to host it, but just hearing that just now, I can picture it. It's going to be very similar to a Chris Jericho segment from years ago where he was doing a eulogy for Boris Malenko, and I feel like it's going to be the same sort of soft praise while putting himself over sort of spot, and eventually Rey or someone associated with Rey is going to have to come out and say, what the heck is going on here?
I agree. And do you think with losing Austin Theory to Seth Rollins and his kind of Messiah gimmick, and now that they're coming up against Rey Mysterio, do you think that some more luchadors are going to kind of join him? And do you think it could be Zelina Vega and Andrade?
That would be an interesting choice. I think if like we were just talking about, if Andrade goes face, then he's a natural fit for backing up somebody like Rey in a feud against the big bad guy faction, and that does elevate him in the card. So I would enjoy seeing it. It would take some interesting twists and turns if they did it, but I don't think anyone is incapable of doing it.
Yeah, I think it would be a great way to elevate Andrade to a main level feud, even if it's a one-off tag team for an episode of Raw, and that's just one element in the larger story between Rey and Seth. I know there was a lot of jokes when this was set, some by me and also lots of memes out there, that there was shades on the American sense of Mark Henry and his big retirement, and there was jokes about salmon-colored masks. The color Sam is not involved in doing with this. But also, I didn't know that Seth was hosting. This adds a whole other element to it, because without Seth, there was a level of people kind of sincerely thinking, wow, this, something must have happened to Rey. It's been made. Maybe a contract hasn't been finalized yet, that this is some way to not only continue a story, but we have an exit strategy for Rey. A contract isn't signed, but now that Seth is part of it, part of the story, and with something Messiah complex, feeling like he has the power to retire and like Rey Mysterio. So I'm really interested in seeing how this rolls out next week.
I think on that you brought up an interesting point. The internet has been swirling with rumors of Rey's retirement. The most common date I've heard is somewhere in October. So they're playing off of that at this point. They announced the retirement because it got us that reaction, and they know that the fans are now going to hungrily tune in to watch what happens with this, thinking then even with knowing that Seth Rollins is going to turn this into an angle, what if it really is Rey's last big feud in the WWE and his contract isn't renewed?
Yeah, it's so true. We're just in a time where nothing seems impossible with someone of Rey's long career and legacy, but also, with age and time, that it's very true. He's coming towards his career. But also, as both of you had mentioned, too, about who else could help him out in this case. It's been talked about before, too. This could be another way to segue Dominic back in the story and him come back in. Yeah. And we may see him for a longer period of time. We've talked before about how Dominic may come into play, Rey's to stay with the WWE or work with a firm or training or whatever, is that, Dominic worked with the WWE and train with it, having Rey help with it. Not to say that, it's him, pushing his son in, but I think having that leverage relationship and being able to organically bring them to a storyline that makes sense, it's a hard thing to create their way. Be able to bring them into a storyline that involves his dad, is pretty smart.
So you just gave me another thought here. What if, as you mentioned, Seth Rollins is the playbook for the young up-and-coming hungry wrestler? What if he gets in Dominic's mind, and that's how this feud goes next? Dominic starts hanging out with Seth.
So good. I hope you're listening, WWE. I hope you're listening, because this is good. This is the deeper storyline level that, and so many people had hoped that Dominic would turn on Rey anyways. It's not, guys that we're referring to this old story, but he's already been in some awkward storylines before between his dad and Eddie. So, now that he's adult, who knows?
Is he actually Rey's kid anymore? I thought that was legally binding.
But I like the idea. I hope it comes to fruition. But you know what? We're just going to have to wait and see what happens next on Monday Night Raw. And
cannot wait.
Yeah, I know we're going to be talking about it next regardless. For sure, you guys are going to have to stay tuned and listen to Lucha Central Weekly next week on our thoughts on Rey Mysterio's quote-unquote retirement. Also happening, NXT is gearing up for NXT in Your House. We had an edition of NXT this past Wednesday with a few outstanding matches that Brendan is going to share with us.
Well, first off, I still want to toss back to Hijo Del Phantasma's winning of the other Cruiserweight bracket 2 weeks ago, which set up the storyline that we got right away, where we're going to have Drake Maverick and Hijo Del Phantasma. I believe that's going to be next week, if I read the press release right, on NXT television. So that in the future is going to be a barn burner. I have lots and lots of feelings on that particular match. Drake Maverick is a very sympathetic face right now they've been using. And then obviously Hijo Del Phantasma has been tied up with all of these mysterious luchador incidents. So we're going to see something big on that. But I don't really want to speculate too hard on that, because that's one of those I want to just watch it unfold. I want to see all of the happenings on that one. But this week we had a couple of matches. We had Raquel Gonzalez and Shotzi Blackheart, who are both lucha trained. Raquel is a second generation, I believe, lucha star. And they had, for me, it was practically a show-stealing match, because even with all the crazy amounts of interference in it, the two of them put on a very physical contest that had me captivated, and I felt like Raquel really looked like a dominant powerhouse, while Shotzi still had a legitimate chance at winning this more than a couple of times.
Yeah, Raquel Gonzalez, she's just badass. Seeing her on that motorcycle, rolling up to Dakota Kai. I mean, she is truly a badass. And I've mentioned this before. I just really love her transformation as a character, as an athlete, as a performer. I do like it's very similar to a Shawn Michaels Diesel type of relationship that she has with Dakota Kai, and I'm for it. I mean, we've talked about that dynamic not working well. Hell, it barely even worked for Shawn and Dean, but I think in this setting it works really well. So I think that it's her just so many opportunities and visibility, and it's allowing her to just reinvent herself into a badass.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a little bit about how much I really love the her look and her badass persona. Dusty, do you have any thoughts on this match?
There was a coffin drop. That was my big note, was that insane coffin drop to the outside. And I mean, I guess Shotzi, really messed up her neck, or at least partially messed it up, and she's going to have to undergo further testing for it. But that coffin drop, oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Shotzi is like the Darby Allin of wrestling. She
really is.
She will put her body on the line for anything.
Yeah, there's a reason she's referred to as a ballsy badass in the indie circuits, and that kind of move is absolutely part of it.
I mean, her movie is so fearless. Yeah, sorry.
No worries. No, she absolutely is fearless. I 100% agree. I could talk for a good long time about how much I enjoy Shotzi's fearless style as well. The other thing I want to sneak in here real fast, though, is they are doing a Killer Cross Tommaso Ciampa build-up. It looks like that's going to be paid off at the In Your House event. And Karrion Kross. I said Killer Cross. WWE.
We're just going to do that. I mean,
getting used to.
Yeah, it's still new, it's still fresh.
So what do you think about that one, Dusty?
I think that would be a really interesting match. I thought Ciampa had a lot more willpower than I did, because if Scarlett came out to stare at me the whole time, I'd probably go chat her up. And I mean, I'm just saying, and so, but I think that's going to be an amazing match. Ciampa's got, such a kind of hard style, and the way he wrestles and everything just looks fantastic and brutal that he does. And I think with Karrion Kross in a match that they could really steal the show, actually.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one to watch. Miranda, did you have anything you were looking forward to on this one?
I mean, I just really like both of their kind of dark personalities. I feel like Ciampa has finally found an equal when it comes to someone who is that dark and almost sadistic in a way. And it's slightly different. Karrion Kross is all about it's all about the end of the world for him, where Ciampa, I think, is a bit more about testing people to their limit. But there's a lot of crossover. It's going to be a true matchup of strengths, a good matchup of personality, a good matchup of darkness, and those are some things that really interest me. But it's also going to be a hard thing to see who will win. I think for Ciampa, they built him up as such a strong champion. It would make sense for Karrion to win and have him be this new kind of flag bearer and monster of NXT.
Yeah, that would really vault him up.
Yeah, but I also don't think Karrion would suffer that much with a loss from Ciampa, because it's Tommaso Ciampa. I mean, he is really one of the cores of NXT, and I to me, in some odd way, I don't think either of them hurt with a loss too. But I'm really intrigued to see what this matchup actually.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. I think there's a lot of things. Again, this is another one I just want to see it unfold. The two of them together is going to be something magical.
Again, we'll be sharing our thoughts on what happens with, especially the interim championship match, the Cruiserweight championship match next week on NXT. I know you feel that Phantasma kind of flying under the radar right now because a lot of the attention's on Drake Maverick, but I certainly agree with Brendan that this is going to be fantastic to watch. So again, you want to know our thoughts? you're going to have to tune in and listen to us next week on the Lucha Central Weekly podcast. Now to something that's, already happened. I'm at a loss for much happened this past Saturday at AEW's Double or Nothing. Dusty, you're going to go over two literally of the biggest matches of this entire card.
Yes. This past Saturday, May the 23rd, was AEW's pay-per-view Double or Nothing, live from Daly's Place in Jacksonville. And one of the obvious highlights was Casino Ladder match. And like you said, there was so much going on here. Phoenix was pulled from the match due to injury before. There was some discussion that he'd be well enough to perform Friday night, but he was ultimately replaced with Joey Janela in the match. But he's supposed to be back without any significant time loss. But then in the ladder match, we had the huge debut of Brian Cage. We had 9 competitors that were starving for a world title opportunity to kind of vault them onto the next level of fame and success and recognition. Literally trying to climb the ladder of success. We had some interesting action. Orange Cassidy at the beginning walked up to the announcer and says, "Wait, how does this match work?" And, like he didn't understand it. And he could have won if he had understood the way the match worked. And it was such a great spot for him, but it didn't make him look like a loser in the match at all. It was brilliant. Let's see. The Cage, of course, came out. He walked out. They had him looking like a monster the second he walked out. He ripped a ladder in half. He had some huge spots. Everybody ganged up on him, and they buried him under the ladders and the guardrails and one of those huge double or nothing poker chips. And then he got out of that and had a huge spot where he powerbombed Luchasaurus. And Luchasaurus is a big guy. He powerbombs Luchasaurus onto a ladder. It was just crazy. And then he eventually wins and gets that title match against Jon Moxley at Fyter Fest. And the chaos and the feeling that multiple things were happening every second were just A+ in this match. And there were so many stories elevated in the match. But I think probably the most important was the introduction of Taz as Cage's manager, I guess. They haven't really said what he is to Cage.
They actually made a point on Dark about saying he's not going to discuss that relationship yet. So that is something we'll have to look forward to.
All right, then.
That's very cool. And Cage was just a complete badass the entire match. He seemed literally unstoppable. And I think that he is going to add some very much needed depth and deeply entertaining talent to their heavyweight roster. That was a spot where I felt AEW wasn't quite as deep as they were in other areas, and so I think this is really going to help. What did you think of the ladder match, Miranda?
I really talked about Orange Cassidy spot, and that just made me laugh so much. You're right. He comes out just kind of laissez-faire, as they call it, but it doesn't take away from him. He could be so good. He could have won. He was literally standing on the ladder, just up. I was cracked. And I wanted them to do that. I was like, he doesn't pretend to up. What are we in this match for? But, Brian, honestly surprised. We were talking about this in our group chat about it because, when the news was broken in January that Cage had signed with AEW, Melissa Santos came out to deny it, state that was not true. And
very emphatically that it wasn't true.
So we all kind of forgot about it, and Cage with an injury. So a lot, we thought, okay, just resting, and we didn't really think much about it, and the world and chaos and things about it. So it actually worked out really well as a surprise, because no one really thought. I think there was still some speculation out there, but there was more speculation of a Gulak, the ninth person, than Brian Cage. So I commend AEW on keeping such a good surprise. And Darby Allin, that skateboard through the ladder, I felt my ankles with that. There was a lot of just spots, but also the way that they stacked all, chairs and railing, the pokers on Brian Cage and him just going through it. I thought that was a really unique way to showcase his strength.
I did too. I loved everything about the match. And then after we had this match, the other big match of the night, the other highlight for me was the Stadium Stampede. I truly loved the Stadium Stampede match. And I loved it when we talked about it, like before, we all had different spots that we really liked and things that we noticed and talked about. And one of the first things I noticed was the cheerleaders on the field, and the inner circle came out in matching football jerseys, and it was presented so perfectly. It made it feel like a really big-time sporting event, the kind that so many people have been missing lately. Sammy Guevara was the star of this match for me. He got chased down by Adam Page on the horse. He hit a beautiful shooting star press. He got chased down by the golf cart. He sold like crazy. If he wasn't already a star, that's what people would call a star-making performance. But I feel like we already kind of knew he was there. But I would love to know your guys' feelings on the match. Brendan, do you want to start us off?
I mean, I'm with you on that. It was hard for me to take my eyes off of the spots where Sammy was on camera. Like, your mileage is going to vary on some of the other things. I was less up on some of the sports reference gags than a lot of people would really like, but that really like that sort of thing. But every time Sammy was doing something, I was absolutely paying 110%. On a personal note, I also was enjoying that all of the referees had time for something. Not just Aubrey, all the referees had a little extra something in that match, which really is magical for me as someone who watches the referees a lot and wants to get back to referee training at some point.
Yeah, this match made me laugh a lot. Speaking of, Bond, Santana and Ortiz somehow getting the adobo in there to throw into Kenny Omega's face, like that's what's up. Like I just was like, I reckon yellow bottle, thinking like, where did this adobo come from? Like, was it in the socks? Like how weird, but I didn't care because that's also aesthetic. It's to a little celebration on Dynamite where they did the New Yorkian gift basket. They had some gifts for everyone in Inner Circle. They give Sammy Guevara this because that Chris Everett is broken in half by being chased from a horse, a golf cart, thrown in a structure. Rub this. That's not very far-fetched. The abuelas out there, the abuelas that listen to the show, which I hope there are some abuelas, you let us know everything. So I love these little tie-in dances, Sammy Guevara did great. Yeah, the adobo spot for it was everything. It was featured in the New York gift basket for this week's, and everyone did fan know. It also did feel too. It felt like the way that they cut into different points throughout the match and different matchups, like Adam Page, Jake Hager, and that whole segment by the bar. Sammy Guevara the whole times, Santana and Ortiz with Matt Hardy. I do feel like there was a lot of good breaking up of the story that you could highlight a few people in a few minutes and it not feeling overwhelmed. So I thought it was a really ending match and it really did feel. It was definitely
my favorite too. I just and every second of the match something was happening, but it was something different. And like you say, all the cuts and everything in between this one and that one, like the Matt Hardy spot in the water. That's probably hit or miss for some people, but I actually loved that. Like they'd hold him under and then all of a sudden he was a different Matt Hardy, and I thought that was great. There were so many little visual gags. I haven't rewatched the match. I need to because there was so much going on that I felt like there's no way that you could catch it all at once. It's the kind of match that would reward repeat viewing because I think every time you watch it, you're going to pick up on a different subtlety.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's one of those things that with cinematic matches that we're getting now, I like when they have those types of Easter eggs and things as wrestling fans are kind of an ode to. I appreciate that as someone who's grown up with it. And so when they incorporate that into a match, it's almost like when you're watching, you've seen it too, like within the Marvel universe, anytime they have an Easter egg to another Marvel movie or comic book, it's like, oh, I caught that. And when you see that in wrestling in a match, it feels kind of the same way.
Absolutely.
Well, again, I'm going to know our thoughts on AEW Dynamite. You're going to have to listen to the show we'll let you know. But next news story of this week is actually a promotion that isn't running any shows as of now, but has a really big luchador presence. Brendan, can you let us know what's happening with Ring of Honor?
Oh yeah, so we've been discussing this for weeks, and we kept procrastinating because ROH is not in the current news cycle, other than the fact that they've been very good and paying their wrestlers and paying their staff well for canceled shows, which is something that's almost unheard of in this business at times. So I'm very excited that we finally get around. They had a recent episode of ROH TV had Dragon Lee talking about some of his favorite matches, which really brought this back to the front of my mind. But, I mean, we would be neglecting the product if we didn't mention the fact that currently 3 of their championships are held by high-profile luchadors. You've got Dragon Lee, who's the TV champ, and they cover that on that episode. They show some of his matches. The 6-man tag team champions are Mexi Blood, Flamita, and Bandito combined with Ray Horse, and then Russia's World Championship. So, like, they're a notable faction in the ROH. They're not just a couple of guys that are happen to wear masks to rings. To matches, they're guys that are doing things, and they're all over the place. You cannot go wrong with watching some of that product for sure. And I know we're working on getting some of that stuff on our YouTube channel at Lucha Central so that you can see highlights from some of those matches. But if you wanted to watch this episode, this recent episode, I don't think it's the most recent one by the time this goes up. Dragon Lee, the Dragon Lee match, he says from his backyard that he's going to introduce you to 3 of his favorite matches. They have one that I was excited to see again, which was his match with, at the time they were calling him Kamitachi, which is Tanahashi from the LIJ faction.
Yes.
And then they also showed the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title with Taiji Ishimori and Bandito from the G1 Super card in Madison Square Garden, which is the 5-minute mark comes around and I was already exhausted. Like in Japanese matches, they do the announcement, and the announcers made a comment on it, but I realized, I was so invested and so exhausted just by that 5-minute mark. And then the last one is a TV title match where he won the ROH TV title from Shane Taylor, which mileage will vary. It's a good match. It is a very solid match. It's not a lucha match like the other 2 where there's heavy amounts of lucha influence in it, but it's a fun match and a good one and very emotional finish.
I agree, and I really liked seeing Taylor get his comeuppance in the TV match because he was yelling, Shane Taylor was yelling, "This is my ring, this is Ring of Honor," and then Dragon Lee wins, and I really loved that kind of underdog story in the match. Yeah.
It like I said, lots of great emotion. Him winning in that moment, you were drawn in and sucked in. So I, as a fan of storytelling, love that match. But like I say, everybody's going to have a different taste. Fortunately, if you are a big lucha fan, you have 2 other lucha heavy matches to watch. I heard some people giggling when I was talking about that 5-minute mark on the junior heavyweight title. Did either of you have any?
Oh my gosh, what an amazing match. Dragon Lee was only the 3rd luchador to ever win IWP Junior Heavyweight title, or WGP rather, Junior Heavyweight title. Juventud Guerrera and Mystico were the other 2. So I mean, like, if that tells you anything about the talent in this match, like it's amazing, and it was so fast. And I mean, everything. There were Super Hurricane Ranas, Dragon Destroyers. I mean, it was just a double moonsault from Bandito. The match, everything. I mean, like, I was trying to eat lunch when I was watching it, and I realized I hadn't touched my food. Like, I just sat there and stared at it the whole time, and it was just so good. Like, it immediately captured your attention, almost hypnotized you. It was so good. Most people can't, and even luchadors and wrestlers, I felt like this was just such a special match.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the fact that they're willing to put it up for free on their television show says that they believe a lot in that product and they believe a lot in those wrestlers. So it was really nice to see that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the way that ROH has approached their luchadors and put them in really high-profile matches and in high-profile roles. I've been a big fan of La Facción Ingobernable with Rush and Dragon Lee, Kenny King, which is that offset Los Ingobernables, and I feel like it's the way that they did it as really a tough faction, one that it carries so much prestige within the company. And, you know, when we were talking about W earlier, you know, they have a lot of good elements with their luchadors in that scene, but they never quite are able to put it together. And this just makes it seem so seamless and perfect. And it really shows that Ring of Honor values Libre. And it makes sense because Ring of Honor has been known as the wrestling. And I know they've gone through lots of evolution challenges and whatnot over the past few years. But I do really help gain, not only regain a fan base, but even a wider by pushing luchadors.
Yeah, that's the thing that I really like about that their current branding is by having the strong relationship with Japan and the strong relationship with Mexico, they're really trying to create a much more global audience and a bigger audience. And you may not get 100% your thing on every card, but you're going to get something. And that is more than enough to, right now especially, to get me invested in watching.
I know that a lot of people have talked about the Ring of Honor, and they will look at, you know, the early years of Ring of Honor. Maybe some do it as rose-colored glasses. Some of them do it, you know, knowing that they were that up-and-comer that really was the playing ground for some of the wrestlers that we know and love that we see on the biggest stages of them all. Do either of you think that having such a strong Lucha Libre presence now can help them get back that place in pro wrestling? Brendan, on your thoughts?
Well, I mean, it seems obvious to me that Lucha Libre is kind of a hot ticket item. Like, there's definitely a renewed interest in Lucha Libre right now, which obviously is exciting to me, and that means that they can probably rise to even bigger heights right now with such a solid investment in Lucha and the events. But I think that there's some fans that are just always going to, as you mentioned, look at the old days, and they're always going to look at the names that went through before, and then, you know, these guys aren't going to be that level for them until they've already graduated from ROH and gone somewhere else and done bigger and better things, because they have to be hipster about it and sound cool.
Good. Dusty, your non-hip perspective.
Well, I honestly, like, I remember ECW, and I did see Jushin Liger on the first episode of Nitro and stuff, so I was aware of masked wrestlers. But the first time I saw ECW, I saw Rey Mysterio, and that was such a big deal to me. And there were people like Psychosis and Eddie Guerrero, and I believe Chris Jericho was there before WCW. And so I think they've understood what made that work and why people, and that was part of what got people so excited about ECW was the luchadors. And I think that they've kind of unlocked that door that nobody else besides ECW kind of figured out. And I think it's going to help I don't think it'll be the main focus of ROH forever, but I think that they're going to have a very heavy lucha presence in the future.
I hope so. I hope they stay with this and they make it a thing that we can continue to enjoy for years, especially because it makes lucha so accessible here in the United States. Not everybody is going to be like us and watch and comb the internet to find all of the Lucha Libre content that's out there.
Very much agreed.
Speaking of Lucha Libre content that's out there and combing the internet, if you're listening to this and you haven't visited luchacentral.com, it's really time to do it. Luchacentral.com is the online home for Lucha Libre, where you get all of the top news in English and in Spanish. Find the best curated video content and original content not seen anywhere else. Find when Lucha Libre events will be happening in your area. Find photo galleries from top photographers covering Lucha Libre around the world. A place to have your voices heard, from weekly polls to annual awards, seen and read by top executives in all of the major Lucha Libre promotions across the globe. And on top of all of this, it's free. luchacentral.com, your centralized place for all things Lucha Libre.
Thank you very much for that, Brendan. And of course, Central.com. This will become your favorite segment of the week. It's Lucha Libre History. Yes, the new segment in which we pick an event that happened in Lucha Libre and our guide to this journey.
Yeah, it's This Week in Lucha Libre. Be sure and check out luchacentral.com every single day for This Day in Lucha Libre by Pep Carrera. I chose May 25th. This is a day that was jam-packed with Lucha Libre history. My amigo Solar, he was born in 1956 in Jalisco, and again on his birthday in 1987, he went on to beat Blue Panther for the UWA Light Heavyweight Championship in Puebla, the only time he would ever hold that championship. And also on May 25th, 2008 this time, Fabi Apache won the AAA Reina de Reinas Championship for the first time, beating Mari Apache and Ayoko Hamada at a live event in Mitchell. But my main reason for picking May the 25th is that in 1989, Jushin Liger won his first IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. This was Jushin Liger, pre-Thunder Liger, and he won the first IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship of his career in beating Hiroshi Hase at the Battle Satellite Show at the Osaka Dome. If you aren't familiar with his early career under the mask or the anime, he had a very different mask at this time. But even if you don't recognize him in appearance, like even his music theme isn't there, but his movements and his body language are just 100% Liger. For the first several minutes, he takes a beating from Hiroshi Hase, but then the Jushin Liger that we all love and really adore awakens and his offense starts coming in. I highly recommend this match to any fan of Jushin's who hasn't seen it yet. It's an important match in the history of one of Japan's most famous, if not the most famous, Japanese masked wrestler. And Liger would never be beaten for this title in this run. He later gave up the title so that it could be the top prize of the best of the Super Junior. And it's an incredible match, and I highly recommend everybody watch it. It's not terribly long, it's easy to digest, but the pacing is amazing.
Yeah, a big master class in pacing. I feel like that's such an art. And some of it, I think, as fans, we've just been so spoiled. And that's okay. We live in a world now where we can get when we want, where we want it, how we want it. But I definitely agree with your comment in the pacing. I thought it was really easy to watch, but incredibly.
I agree completely. Let me go ahead and pass it off to you now, Miranda, for your This Day in Lucha.
Yeah, so speaking of themes for the week, one thing I was noticing all of this week is that there are a lot of hair matches. There's at least 6 hair versus hair matches this week. I'm going to get to my main one in a little bit, but a few of them, just briefly. Back on May 28th, Ricky Marvin won the Super Cow's hair in a hair versus hair match in Mexico City. Some few that haven't the show, but we got some tidbits for you. So listen in or view these on luchacentral.com. May 30th, one of the tidbits that we have is 1983, Corazon de Leon, also known as Lionheart, also known as Chris Jericho, won Cro-Magno's hair in a hair versus hair match. And then also on May 27th, there were 2 hair versus hair matches. And again, this was Ricky Marvin won Americo Rocco's hair in hair versus hair match. But the one I really wanted to was 1994, May 27th. The Legends of Lucha Libre show, or Conan, won Jake the Snake Roberts a hair versus hair match at Triple Mania 2. And the reason that I chose this day was more of the backstory that I learned about this particular match. series between Conan and Jake the Snake Roberts. The match between them at Triple Mania was an accumulation of months of storyline. Actually, that kind of began almost a full year before. In the first Triple Mania back in '93, Jake Roberts was there at the show, just kind of observing. He was there in the front row to watch the match, to watch the show. During that event was the main event of Triple Mania 1 was a retirement match between Conan and Cien Caras, where the Lucha had to retire. And in that match, Jake Roberts involved that made him lose, so he had to essentially retire. Roberts was AAA to do some guest spots here and there, which brought back retirement from Jake Roberts. So they went back and forth for mostly a whole year up until Triple Mania 2. And the match itself was a 2-out-of-6 match, and Conan got both of those falls. And the match has, of course, a lot of shenanigans, including Conan being cuffed to the ring and lots of interference. But in learning more about the backstory of this match, I thought it was really entertaining. And also, who knew that in 2020, Jake Roberts having a crazy world.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I'm primed for losing my hair in an Apuestas match right now. I'm ready for that. So that's great. This is the month that gives me hope.
In 30, but it's that was 94. So a good while after that, the odds have turned a little bit. So 20 years from now, you could have luscious locks, and I'll be.
Oh. Twist of fate.
Brendan, why don't you tell us what day you...
Okay, so I chose May 29th. There's a lot of things going on this day. Dusty mentioned Legends of Lucha Solar. He has a match on this where he wins the UWA World Welterweight Championship from Viano 3 in Mexico City. There's I believe footage of that on luchacentral.com. It's a fantastic match of two of my favorite technical wrestlers. Solar Jr. was born on this day. I didn't get the year on that. That was a bad thing for me to do. I don't want to give away his age, I guess. 87, thank you.
No problem.
But the biggest thing on this day was the match. Many people have seen a little bit of footage of it going around already. You have Connect versus the Blue Blazer in a mask versus mask match. Obviously, El Connect, who still has a mask to this day, won that match. And then Owen Hart, who has been quite the topic of conversation in the last couple of weeks, lost his match, and people were praising this match as the beginning of the rise of Owen Hart as opposed to the Blue Blazer gimmick that he was. And again, this is it's kind of an interesting sort of almost changing of the guard, because even though Connect won, it's near the end of what he's doing, where he was defending Mexico from all the foreign invaders for decades, and the Blue Blazer Owen Hart thing was the beginning of the high-flying kind of rope-walking techniques being massively popular and accepted. He was well ahead of his time on that, and so by having this match, you can kind of see a little bit of the shift as to where we are today, which kind of made it really interesting. And of course, Owen Hart is a personal favorite of mine, so I was not at all upset to watch this match.
Yeah, it's very true, looking at history in this lens too, knowing the career of Owen Hart, and even not a lot of people knew about his time in Mexico, here and there, and the fact that it's to his ability of being a phenomenal wrestler, and also kind of some of those early origins of the Blue Blazer gimmick. And unfortunately, it has more of a negative association now because of his passing. But, it also was a very smart gimmick for him. It's something very different from anything that anyone in the Hart family ever did.
Yeah, it was, and that was what Owen's branding was to be different from the rest of the Harts. That was something he very much wanted from day one. And the Blue Blazer, I felt like, was the perfect thing on that, especially like Chris Jericho was talking about it. The Stampede fans recognized that he was probably a Canadian from the Stampede Federation, but they had no idea who it was, which made it perfect.
Very much agreed. So, everyone, as we mentioned, all of these dates were picked from luchacentral.com, This Day in Lucha Libre History. They put this out every single day. Many videos as well. So any of the matches that we talked about do have video embedded each day. So if you want to watch, you can also watch them on the YouTube channel. But let us know on social media, what were some of your favorite events from this week? It could be birthday, champions one. It could be a hair versus hair match. There was 19 of them. Oh, there's a lot of hair versus hair matches. But let us know what you enjoyed most out of this week. And hey, if anything, you can say you did something new. Now we are going to commercial from one of our partners, thechairshot.com.
Why should you visit thechairshot.com? Thechairshot.com is your home for hard-hitting reviews, news, opinion, and analysis with attitude. Why? Because you're smarter than the average fan. Thechairshot.com. Always use your head.
Yes, thank you to thechairshot.com. Speaking of .coms, we had a nice little fun thing going on this week where we were combing the internet to find interesting things that were going on. So why don't we start with Miranda? It looks like you have something fun you wanted to start off with.
Yes. So in exploring the internet, as we do, as podcasters, as pro wrestling fans, as Lucha Libre fans, it's part of our. So in combing the internet and social media, I came across a video on the Plus Lucha TV page, but it's also embedded everywhere on Twitter. This particular video made me laugh because it is a promo of the original Invisible Man, who is promoting his next match will be with Lucha Libre Vanguardia. And for those of you who are not familiar with the man, invisible wrestler. He wrestles. He's invisible. No one. I mean, you think you can't see John Cena, but the Invisible Man has never been. So it starts off with a little bit of a training segment from the Invisible Man. And if you're wondering, I'm trained. Well, he uses some equipment. The equipment moves. Nobody there. So. Mysterious. And then the Invisible Man goes a promo, letting him know that his way down to Mexico to Lucha Libre Vanguardia, there to face the best of the best. And then he breaks out a little, who knew the Invisible Man is also bilingual. So this video blew my mind on so many levels. And I mean, you could just Google Invisible Man Wrestling, but he's making a big name, making his way down to Mexico. This is on the. I don't know what else to say. That's just the best way I can describe it.
Thank you, Internet. I mean, that's what you can say. You can thank the Internet for providing us such great entertainment. Dusty, what did you find?
My favorite video this week was called Helen Trains a Wrestler by comedian Brendan Rogers. It's a little offensive. You probably won't want to watch it at work. It stars Sammy Guevara. Brendan Rogers plays an old Jewish woman who's a wrestling trainer, and she's going to train Sammy Guevara. And it is just ridiculous and hilarious, and every gag in it just had me cracking up. I've told everybody about it this week. It's older. It's like 3 years old, but I just loved it, and it is so funny, and I think everyone would really get a kick out of it. But again, probably don't watch it in front of your mom and dad or where your boss can hear.
Always good to have that not safe for work content warning before you watch a lot of wrestling content. So I didn't find a video. I was a little busier this week, but I did find a very amusing interaction on Twitter just this morning, actually. So Serpentico, if you follow him on Twitter, it's King Serpentico, was retweeted an edit that someone did of his AEW graphics, because he's appeared in a couple of Dark matches now, as in the program Dark, not the wrestling term Dark match. And he's lost. He's been up against some big names, and so they edited his graphic to show that he is 0-2 in AEW, and of course he was commenting about, the disrespect and all of that. And then Lince Dorado pops in and says, it could be worse, you could be 0-3, and they start commenting a little back and forth on, Lucha House Party gimmick versus Serpentico. It's quite fun.
I'm going to have to check that out. I love Lince Dorado.
Yes. 2 Puerto Rican masked luchadors. I'm in. Take my money. I will. That's all you got to tell me. I'm sold. You know. And you know, yeah, it's also bad. We were talking about Ring of Honor earlier and how well known faction trios and stuff they have now in luchadors. And you know, I love Lucha House Party dearly, but man, they can never catch a break.
I was thinking that might have turned around, but so far, it's only been a tease.
Only been a tease, yes. Well, you guys can share with us some of your favorite videos or social media interactions. In general, though, if you are looking for all your latest Lucha Libre news analysis, you can go to luchacentral.com. Don't forget that Lucha Central is available on Facebook, Instagram, at Lucha Central, and you can follow them on Twitter at luchacentral.com. Of course, we have our very own YouTube page. There you can find some clips of videos from Ring of Honor, AAA, CMLL, a really big catalog. Before we get into our info, I want to reference something that we mentioned last week. This is a trios podcast. We are a triad of hosts here, 3 people, and we asked those on media to give some suggestions on some trios names, because every trio has a good name. Every good faction has a name. What kind of Lucha Libre podcast would be without one? And Brendan has a few contenders that has been sent to him.
It was on our YouTube channel. Emmett Brown has commented he likes the name Under the Mask Chat Trio or the Triple Threat Lucha Chat. These are both pretty solid, but I feel like with all of the internet at our disposal, we could probably get some really big home run ones. So I'd like to hear a few more before we decide on our trio's name.
Yeah. No, keep sending those in.
Yes, please send them in. A big thank you to Emmett. We'll continue to hear some suggestions. So, Emmett, if you have some more, feel free to leave that in. And yeah,
ask Marty McFly, too.
Yes. Oh, man. Tell us on media. You can tell us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, any of those places, both on the Lucha Central podcast or Central forms of social media, and our own individual one. Me, Miranda Morales, well, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at #Miranda. Dusty, to let us know where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Dusty Murphy and Facebook on facebook.com/Dusty Murphy.
And of course, Brendan, where can our fans find you?
So I am on both Instagram and Twitter as 321 T-shirt guy. I have said many times, that's still true, I'm much more involved on the Twitter. So if you want to get a hold of me, that's the fastest way. And I'm still also Miranda's receptionist, and we'll take your messages for her on the Twitter platform as well.
Yes, so if y'all have any messages, leave it with Brendan. He'll relay it to me. We communicate very frequently, so, you know, he doesn't mind taking my messages, you know. But that's also what makes Brendan, he is our Twitter aficionado, and we heavily rely on him for that. Very, very. And again, let us know your thoughts on this show. We are enjoying ourselves producing this for you every single week. We'd love to hear thoughts on the topics we talk about, and maybe some of the things that we don't talk about. Let us know comments. And again, this podcast is available on all of the major podcast streaming formats: iTunes, Spotify, Podbay, Speaker. You can listen to this on the Lucha Central YouTube channel if that's your thing, and pretty much anywhere else. So we thank you for listening this week, and we'll be back here next week doing it all over again. We hope you join us then.
Them candado, pícale los ojos, jálalo del pelo y sácalo del ring. Pícale los ojos, jálalo del pelo, sácalo del ring. Déjale la Wilson, métele la Nelson, la quebradora y el tirabuzón. Quítale el candado, pícale los ojos, jálalo del pelo y sácalo del ring.
Lucha-Masks.com by Pro Wrestling Revolution, bringing you, in partnership with Masked Republic, the Lucha Brothers, as well as Japanese legend Ultimo Dragon. Go to Lucha-Masks.com and fight Lucha Strong with masks from your favorite Lucha legends and Pro Wrestling Revolution luchadores. Stay safe in style and represent your favorite luchador. Get yours now at Lucha-Masks.com, powered by Pro Wrestling Revolution.